You've all probably heard the rumors circulating in recent days, terrifying stories out of Virginia, where in just the past week, more than 80 children have been reported missing, with frightened parents whispering about an ice cream truck seen driving slowly through their neighborhoods. Social media has been ablaze with speculation, and while many dismiss it as a hoax or a modern urban legend, the fear feels real, doesn't it? But here's something most people don't know. This isn't the first time Virginia has been haunted by such a tale. Because exactly 100 years ago, in the summer of 1921, communities across the state were struck by a wave of child disappearances so chilling, so unexplainable, that local newspapers struggled to put the pieces together. And at the heart of those stories was, once again, a brightly painted truck selling ice cream to unsuspecting children. Tonight, we're going to dig into the forgotten history of what became known, at least in hushed whispers, as the Virginia ice cream truck disappearances. So make sure you're subscribed, hit that notification bell, and let's step back in time to the sweltering heat of a Virginia summer more than a century ago, when the laughter of children at play slowly gave way to silence, and the streets began to empty. It was July of 1921. The war was over. The nation was still reeling from the Spanish flu, and families were doing their best to find joy in the small things: community fairs, picnics, the music drifting from phonographs on porches. And for children, nothing brought excitement, quite like the arrival of the ice cream cart. But in Virginia that year, something was different. In small towns from Richmond to Roanoke, parents began reporting that their children had not come home after supper. At first it was dismissed. Perhaps the children had gone fishing. Perhaps they were staying overnight with friends. But by the end of the first week, 6 were gone. By the end of the month, the number was closer to 30. And in nearly every account, neighbors remembered seeing the same thing: a pale blue truck with painted stripes and the words "Frost and Sons, Frozen Delights" stenciled on the side. It played a tinkling melody from a hand-cranked music box, a cheerful tune that children could hear from blocks away. One mother from Bedford recalled, "My boy said the man gave him a cone for free. He came home that evening smiling. But 2 days later, when the truck came again, he ran out to meet it. That was the last I saw of him." Authorities at first resisted the idea that an ice cream vendor could be involved. After all, the Frost family were respected in their community. Their business had operated in Virginia for nearly a decade, delivering cold treats on hot days. Sheriff's deputies even checked their main factory in Lynchburg and found nothing unusual. Yet the sightings continued. Dr. Nathaniel Green, a local physician who often doubled as coroner, began keeping his own notes after examining several cases of children who were found days later, wandering miles from home, unable to recall where they had been. He wrote, "The children describe a place cold and dark, filled with the smell of sugar and iron. They speak of music that would not stop, and of a man with a paper hat who smiled too much." By mid-August, the panic was undeniable. Newspapers carried headlines like "Mystery Truck, Frightens Parents," and "Is there a Pied Piper in Virginia?" Families kept their children indoors. Men took to patrolling their neighborhoods with rifles. And yet, the disappearances did not stop. By the second week of August 1921, the strange case of Virginia's missing children was no longer confined to whispers. Families locked their doors, schools dismissed classes early, and church sermons warned of a devil on wheels. The number of missing had risen past 40, but then came an even more disturbing twist. Some of the children began to reappear. A 9-year-old girl named Clara was discovered wandering along a dirt road outside Charlottesville at dawn. Her shoes were gone, her dress torn, and she carried in her hand a small wooden stick, painted with stripes like a candy cane. When asked where she had been, she whispered, "In the cold room." The man gave me music." She could not explain further. Another boy, just 7, turned up outside a farmhouse in Bedford County 3 days after vanishing. His face was pale, lips cracked, and he refused to eat anything but sugar cubes. When questioned by his father, he muttered, "The truck was loud, the ice cream was sour, then the dark." Beyond that, he remembered nothing. These accounts spread fear even more than the disappearances. It was one thing for children to vanish. It was another for them to return changed, speaking in fragments, clutching odd trinkets that parents swore they had never owned. Dr. Green, who had treated several of the returned children, began recording the similarities. Nearly all complained of a freezing chamber, the taste of iron, and a constant melody. Always the same lilting tune from a hand-cranked music box. In his notes, Green underlined a single phrase again and again. "This is systematic, not chance. Someone is studying them." Yet suspicion was difficult to place. The Frost family, owners of Frost and Sons Frozen Delights, were pillars of the community. Their patriarch, Samuel Frost, was known for donating barrels of ice to church socials and sponsoring the county fair. Their ice cream trucks, painted in cheerful stripes of blue and white, were a beloved sight during the summer months. No one wanted to believe that such a respected family business could be involved. Still, the coincidences piled up. A farmhand in Roanoke swore he saw one of the Frost trucks parked near a creek late at night, its lanterns extinguished, the driver unloading heavy crates into a barn. A woman in Lynchburg reported a strange, sweet and metallic smell drifting from the Frost warehouse long after the day's deliveries had ended. Determined to investigate, Sheriff Albright of Bedford County organized a search of the company's property. On the surface, everything appeared normal. Rows of churns, barrels of cream, blocks of ice hauled in from the mountains. But in a disused storage building at the far edge of the yard, deputies found something unsettling. Beneath a tarpaulin lay a pile of children's shoes, scuffed, mismatched, far too many to belong to the Frost family. Nearby, a wooden crate contained dolls with missing eyes, marbles sticky with syrup, and scraps of fabric that looked like pieces of clothing. When questioned, Samuel Frost insisted the items were simply lost and found, goods left behind by neighborhood children. Yet the explanation rang hollow. Dr. Green, called to the scene, examined the objects carefully. In his journal he wrote, "The collection bears no resemblance to playthings gathered by accident. They are curated, preserved, as though each piece holds meaning for the collector. To what end, I cannot yet determine, but the intention is deliberate." News of the discovery leaked quickly, igniting outrage across Virginia. Crowds gathered outside Frost and Sons demanding answers. The family maintained their innocence, insisting they were victims of coincidence and rumor. Some townsfolk defended them, arguing that panic was clouding reason. Others shouted for their arrest. Amid the chaos, the disappearances continued. Children vanished from farms and schoolyards, always with the same final report. The tinkling tune of a music box, a pale blue truck at the corner, and a smiling man in a paper hat. By the end of August, the tally of missing had surpassed 60. The state newspapers gave the case a name that would linger for decades in whispers: the Virginia ice cream truck mystery. And as fear gripped every household, Dr. Green made a chilling decision. If lawmen would not act decisively, he would investigate on his own. His first step, to follow the truck. Dr. Nathaniel Green had never considered himself a man of adventure. A physician by trade and temperament, he was more accustomed to the quiet routine of treating fevers and setting broken bones than to skulking through fields at night. Yet by late August of 1921, Green felt he had no choice. The authorities were paralyzed by politics. The newspapers were feeding hysteria without resolution, and the Frost family's explanations grew thinner by the day. So Green began his own nightly vigils. He would leave his practice in Bedford under the pretense of visiting patients, but instead, he positioned himself along the dusty roads leading out of Lynchburg, lantern-hooded, notebook in hand. He carried a revolver in his satchel, not because he trusted his aim, but because the thought of approaching that pale blue truck without protection made his hands tremble. On the night of August 27th, his patience was rewarded. Shortly after midnight, Green heard the faint metallic rattle of a vehicle cresting the hill. He crouched low among the hedgerows as the machine rolled past. By moonlight, the painted letters were clear enough. Frost and Sons, Frozen Delights. But unlike the cheerful daylight rounds, the truck bore no decorations of bunting, no cheerful music. Its lanterns were dark, its cargo bed covered with a heavy canvas. And the driver, if Green's eyes did not deceive him, wore no uniform, only a long white coat, like that of a butcher. The truck turned off the main road and headed toward the river bluffs. Green followed at a distance, heart pounding, until the vehicle pulled into a derelict storage shed once used by the railroad. From his hiding place, Green watched as two men unloaded wooden crates. They moved with practiced efficiency, pausing often to glance into the shadows, as though aware that eyes might be upon them. When the men finally departed, Green crept closer. The shed reeked of spoiled sugar and something fouler, an acrid tang that stung the nose and clung to the lungs. Inside, his lantern revealed rows of crates stacked against the walls. Many were marked with the Frost Company emblem. But when Green pried one open, he did not find ice or cream. Instead, he discovered folded blankets, children's shoes, and a half-empty bottle of laudanum. Another crate held glass jars filled with cloudy liquid, each containing small, indistinct shapes floating within. Green swallowed hard, unwilling to look closer. Near the back of the shed, he discovered a makeshift table on which lay a ledger. The entries were neat, written in Samuel Frost's hand. Dates, towns, and numbers. Some lines bore a single mark. 1 boy, 2 girls, none. Green's blood ran cold. It was not inventory of ice cream. It was inventory of children. And then there were the drawings. Pinned to the wall with nails were sheets of parchment, each bearing crude sketches of human figures. Not playful doodles, but anatomical studies. Bones, joints, organs. Beside them were scrawled notes, measurements, durations, even what appeared to be times of day. One sheet read, "Subject ceased crying after 14 minutes. Pulse steady until sugar withheld." Green stumbled back, bile rising in his throat. In that moment, any lingering doubt evaporated. Whatever facade Frost and Sons had maintained, their true enterprise was something monstrous. He fled the shed before dawn, returning to his office, where he collapsed into a chair, his hands shaking so violently he could scarcely write. Yet he forced himself to record every detail, knowing that, should he fall victim to the same fate as the missing children, someone might one day read his account. The next evening, Green attempted to bring his findings to Sheriff Albright, but the sheriff, a stout man worn thin by weeks of panic, bristled at the accusation. "You bring me drawings and shoes, doctor, and call it evidence? The Frosts are respected people. If I accuse them without proof, I'll have a riot on my hands." Green argued, but Albright cut him off. "You want me to hang a family on the word of frightened children and your hunches? No, not unless you catch them in the act." Frustrated, Green resolved to gather stronger proof. For 3 nights he shadowed the truck again, watching it wind through hamlets and crossroads, always at odd hours, always lingering near schools or playgrounds long after dark. On the 4th night, he saw something he would never forget. The truck stopped at the edge of a small settlement. From the shadows, Green watched as the driver, a man in a paper hat, stepped down and opened the rear doors. 2 children emerged, stumbling as though drugged. The man held them by the wrists, guided them toward the woods, then returned alone minutes later. When the truck drove off, Green rushed to the spot. The children were gone. Only a discarded rag doll lay in the grass. By dawn, word of yet more disappearances had spread. Parents wept on porches, and townsfolk muttered of mobs and vigilante justice. Yet still, the Frost family denied everything, calling the rumors malicious slander. In his journal that night, Green wrote, "They have constructed a theater of innocence, but behind the curtain is a factory of horror. And unless we act, Virginia will bury its children by the dozens before the leaves turn." By September of 1921, Virginia was boiling. In towns from Richmond to Roanoke, the streets were nearly empty of children. Playgrounds sat silent, swings swaying idly in the breeze. Doors that once stood open were bolted shut. Farmers, who once welcomed neighbors, now eyed every visitor with suspicion. And everywhere, people whispered the same word, Frost. On the first Sunday of September, a mob gathered outside the Frost and Sons warehouse in Lynchburg. More than 200 men and women crowded the yard, waving lanterns and shouting for answers. Some carried rifles. Others hurled rocks at the painted trucks parked out front. The Frost family appeared on the steps. Samuel Frost himself, flanked by his two sons, William and Thomas. Dressed in crisp white coats, they raised their hands and swore their innocence. "We are merchants of ice, not thieves of children," Samuel shouted over the crowd. He insisted that the crates and shoes found in the storage shed were the work of vandals, that the rumors were fueled by hysteria and jealousy. "Our business feeds families. Do not let fear destroy what goodness remains in this town." For a moment, the crowd wavered. These were, after all, men they had known for years, who had sponsored fairs, who had donated to churches. But just then, a woman at the edge of the gathering screamed. She held aloft a small dress, tattered and stained. "This is my daughter's," she cried. "And you dare speak of goodness?" Chaos erupted. The sheriff's deputies forced their way between the Frosts and the mob, warning that any violence would bring the state militia. Shots were fired into the air, and slowly, reluctantly, the crowd dispersed. But the anger did not fade. It only smoldered, waiting for the next spark. Dr. Green, watching from the fringes, knew the town was on the edge of bloodshed. Yet the law remained paralyzed. Judge Morton of Bedford County called a special hearing, but without living witnesses or confessions, he declared there was insufficient evidence to prosecute. The Frost trucks continued to roll. The disappearances continued. Meanwhile, Green's own position grew precarious. Anonymous notes began arriving at his practice. Scraps of paper slipped under the door at night. "Stay silent or join them. The doctor who meddles will find his own medicine bitter." Once, his dog was found dead outside the clinic, throat neatly slit. Green, undeterred, doubled his efforts to record everything in his journals, convinced that even if he perished, the truth must survive. Then came the case of Benjamin Cross. The boy vanished from his family's porch one evening in late September. But unlike most victims, Benjamin returned 2 days later, half-starved, eyes wide with terror. His parents carried him to Green, who examined him carefully. The boy could barely speak, his voice hoarse from screaming. When Green coaxed him gently, Benjamin whispered of a cold place full of buzzing lights, of music that never stopped, and of men in white coats pouring sweet water into our mouths. Most chilling of all, Benjamin drew a picture with trembling hands. It showed the striped Frost truck, its back doors open wide. Inside were not shelves of ice cream, but rows of cages. Green recorded the account in detail, though he feared no court would accept the testimony of a traumatized child. Still, he felt that Benjamin might be the key, the living proof that could turn rumor into evidence. He resolved to keep the boy safe. But safety, in Virginia, that autumn, was a fragile thing. Only a week after his return, Benjamin vanished again. His bedroom window was found open, curtains fluttering in the night air. On the sill lay a single wooden stick, painted in red and white stripes, sticky with syrup. The boy was never seen again. The loss broke the town's last restraint. Farmers spoke openly of lynching the Frosts. Mothers carried kitchen knives to church. Fathers patrolled the roads in wagons, blocking passage to any pale blue truck they saw. Yet somehow, the disappearances continued unabated, as though the trucks could slip past even the sharpest watch. Dr. Green, now more desperate than ever, wrote in his journal, "The apparatus is larger than I feared. This is no lone madman. It is a system, hidden beneath the mask of commerce, and its appetite is growing." By the final days of September 1921, Dr. Nathaniel Green had reached a breaking point. His patients whispered of curses, the townsfolk sharpened their pitchforks, and still the Frost trucks rolled on, cheerful by day, sinister by night. Green knew that if he did not act, no one would. So he made his choice. He would go inside. On the evening of September 29th, he positioned himself once again near the abandoned railroad spur where he had once discovered the ledgers and shoes. Hours passed, the night thick with the hum of crickets, until at last he heard the low growl of an engine. A pale blue truck rumbled down the track, its lanterns extinguished, and disappeared into the shed. Green waited until the drivers departed, then crept forward, revolver in one hand, lantern in the other. The air inside was colder than he expected. Blocks of ice, freshly delivered, lined the walls. But the deeper he went, the stranger it became. A trapdoor in the floor, half concealed beneath a tarp, revealed a set of stairs descending into darkness. Green hesitated only a moment before descending. The stench struck him first. Sweetness and rot. Sugar and iron mingled until the air itself felt poisonous. His lantern revealed a chamber carved from stone, lit by buzzing electric bulbs strung along the ceiling. And in that chamber, lined in 2 rows, were cages. Children's cages. Some were empty, doors ajar. Others held ragged blankets and half-eaten cones of ice cream, melting into sticky puddles. On the walls were crude chalk marks, tallies perhaps, or schedules. And everywhere, the faint tinkling of a music box, its melody echoing endlessly, winding down only to be cranked up again by a mechanical hand. Green forced himself forward, bile rising in his throat. On a central table lay instruments gleaming in the electric light, scalpels, clamps, syringes, laid out with the precision of surgery. Nearby stood jars filled with syrupy liquid, each containing something pale and shapeless within. He could not bring himself to look closer. But the most chilling sight was the ledger, open upon the table. Page after page, neat handwriting recorded names, dates, and numbers. Some were crossed out. Others bore small notes. Unfit, disposed. Strong lungs, retain. Reaction time, 14 minutes. Green staggered back, his mind reeling. This was no mere abduction. This was organized, methodical, purposeful. The Frosts were not merchants of ice cream. They were running a factory of flesh. A sound startled him. Footsteps on the stairs. Voices. He extinguished his lantern and crouched behind a stack of crates, heart hammering. 2 men descended. Samuel Frost himself and his eldest son. They spoke in low tones. Green strained to hear. Shipment must go north by rail. Too many questions here. Green suspects. He must be silenced. 1 more night. Then we move. The men lingered only minutes before departing, leaving Green trembling in the dark. He waited until the footsteps faded, then crept back up the stairs, every creak of the boards a thunderclap in his ears. Somehow he made it outside, stumbling into the cool night air. He did not sleep that night. Instead, he filled page after page with frantic notes. Cages, ledgers, instruments. Frost family complicit, preparing to flee. By morning, Green carried his account to Sheriff Albright. But the sheriff, exhausted and red-eyed, shook his head. "Doctor, you're asking me to storm the business of one of the wealthiest families in Virginia based on your word and some scribbles. If I'm wrong, we'll have riots and lawsuits from here to Richmond. If I'm right, God help us all." The sheriff promised to consider the matter, but Green saw the fear in his eyes. Albright was a man trapped between the fury of his citizens and the power of the Frosts. And in that paralysis, Green realized children would continue to vanish. That evening, he returned to his journal one last time. The apparatus is vast. They plan to vanish into the night, leaving Virginia with nothing but graves and rumors. If I do not stop them, who will? October arrived, and with it the chill of autumn winds sweeping through Virginia's valleys. But the air did little to cool the fever that gripped the towns. Parents refused to let their children walk to school alone. Churches rang their bells at dusk, a warning for families to gather their young inside before nightfall. The frost trucks, once a beloved summer fixture, were now watched with hatred and fear. Dr. Nathaniel Green knew the end was coming. He had seen the ledgers with his own eyes, heard Samuel Frost speak of shipments moving north. Every hour that passed was another chance for the family to slip away. On the night of October 3rd, Green set out determined to intercept them. He carried not only his journal, but also a satchel packed with lantern oil and matches. If the law would not act, then perhaps fire could do what justice could not. But fate, it seemed, was already ahead of him. Just after midnight, a pale blue truck was found abandoned on a dirt road outside Amherst. The doors stood open, the engine cold. Inside were sticky pools of syrup, a child's bonnet, and a small wooden music box that still tinkled its eerie melody when wound. Blood spattered the back step, though no bodies were found. Tracks in the mud suggested several people had departed in haste, some large, some small. By dawn, the Frost household in Lynchburg was empty. The furniture remained, the ice barrels still stacked, but the family themselves were gone. Neighbors reported hearing wagons depart in the dead of night, but none could say where they had gone. Sheriff Albright, under immense pressure, announced that the Frosts had fled to avoid harassment, and that the missing children were likely victims of runaways, accidents, or fever. The newspapers echoed his words, dismissing the panic as mass hysteria. Headlines shifted to other matters: the coal strikes, the influenza returning, the endless chatter of politics. Within weeks, the story was buried. But Green could not forget. He knew what he had seen. He preserved his journals, hiding them away with instructions that they be opened only if he did not survive. In his final entry, dated October 5th, he wrote, "The Frosts are gone, the apparatus dismantled, or perhaps moved. But their hunger is not ended. It will surface again, in another place, under another name. Should these words ever be read, know this: beware the music in the street, and the man who smiles too much, for the truck may return." And return it did, or so the whispers claimed. In 1935, reports from rural Ohio spoke of a striped van seen near schoolyards, followed by the disappearance of 3 children. In 1947, during a heat wave in Pennsylvania, families told of a cheerful vendor handing out free cones just before 2 brothers vanished without a trace. Each time, the newspapers treated it as rumor, coincidence, or hysteria. Yet in every account, The details were eerily similar. The painted stripes, the music box tune, the paper hat. Even decades later, long after the Frost name had faded, parents in Virginia warned their children, "Don't run when you hear the music truck. Don't take sweets from strangers. Don't follow the ice cream man." And perhaps that is why the recent rumors spreading across social media today feel so chillingly familiar. 80 children missing in a single week, an ice cream truck seen prowling the neighborhoods, authorities slow to respond, the same cycle of fear, dismissal, and silence. Is it merely a hoax, an echo of an old urban legend? Or is it the shadow of history resurfacing, a century-old hunger rising once more? We may never know, but one thing is certain. When the music plays and the truck turns the corner, every parent feels the same cold shiver. And that brings us to the end of this story. The forgotten mystery of the Virginia ice cream truck disappearances of 1921. If you found this story chilling, make sure to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you don't miss the next tale from history's darkest corners. And now, we want to hear from you. Do you think the Frost family really existed, slipping away into the shadows of history? Or was the entire affair just an elaborate hoax that spiraled out of control? Leave your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay cautious, stay curious, and remember, not every smile hides kindness.